And now for our final story of the evening, which comes from our very own subscriber base. So let's jump right into it. Story 2, The Sound of Children. This happened to me about 3 years ago while I was working security at a large resort in the middle of nowhere. I was only 19 and just getting over a bad breakup, so needless to say I was lonely. Anyway, I was working a solo shift and it was 3 a.m. I was sitting in the front office just scrolling through Facebook on my phone when suddenly I heard what sounded like 4 children laughing and running down the hall. I assumed it was kids from one of the families staying here. But this was the only family within a 40-mile radius, and they had a full day planned for tomorrow, so I figured they would be sleeping. Either way, I thought nothing of it until I heard the commotion again. It was 3 a.m., and the kids shouldn't be awake. I got up and walked down the hall to see if I could find them, but no such luck. Maybe they were playing a prank or something. I shrugged it off and went back to the office. 10 minutes later, I heard the laughter again and then something else. Heavy footsteps coming down the hall. I grabbed my flashlight and walked out to see what was going on. Nothing. Still, I checked all the rooms near where I had heard the noise. I even checked the connecting doors to the neighboring rooms, but everything was empty. By this time, I was pretty scared. I wasn't sure if I should call the cops or not, so I decided to check the security footage. Of course, by the time I got to the security room and pulled up the footage, whatever was making the noise was gone. I reviewed the footage from earlier, and all I saw was the ghost of a little girl running down the hall. Her hair was long and she was wearing a Victorian nightgown. It looked like an old black and white film. I paused the recording and took a screenshot on my phone. I showed the image to my boss, who told me to delete the video and get over it. He didn't believe me. I wasn't even supposed to have access to the security footage, so I was in a bit of trouble anyway. I was skeptical, but I didn't want to believe what I was seeing, so I convinced myself that it must have been some trick of the light. After all, how could there be ghosts at a resort, right? Fast forward 2 months, and I'm sitting in the same spot in the front office. It was 3 a.m. again. What are the odds? And I heard the sound of little feet running. I jumped in my seat and looked toward the door. I needed to get out of there. I quit the next day, and I didn't hear from my boss for a couple weeks. One afternoon, I got a call from him asking why I quit. He wanted me to come back. He also offered to double my pay. Of course, I accepted. How could I pass up free money? Plus, I was curious. I wanted to see the ghost again. I started working the night shift again. On my second day, it happened again. I heard the little feet running, the laughter. I turned to look and saw the apparition of a young boy in period clothing standing at the end of the hallway. He was staring at me. I couldn't move. It felt like I was paralyzed. His eyes were soulless and emotionless. He began to walk toward me, and I watched in horror as he took what seemed like huge steps. Remember, this kid was no bigger than 4 or 5. Each step he took was twice the length of his body. His eyes never left mine, and then he stopped. He pointed at me and let out a blood-curdling scream. I ran. I hid in the supply closet in the hallway for hours. I was certain that he was out there looking for me. Eventually, the sun came up and I went back to the office. I quit again. This time, I never went back. To this day, I still have the photo on my phone. My boss told me that there were no security cameras in the building, and yet when I checked the footage, there was a camera in the exact spot where I had seen the boy. Even he was surprised. He never asked me what I saw, but whenever there's a full moon, I swear I hear the sound of children laughing. Thank you so much for watching. I've been your host, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media to see more submitted stories like these. And now, on to the story. Story 2, The Camp That Never Existed. I was cleaning out my late Uncle Ass storage unit when I found a dusty box labeled "Do Not Watch." Inside was an old camcorder. No charger, but an SD card was still inside. I plugged it into my laptop. The files were dated 2017. 4 young adults, 2 guys, 2 girls, camping in Black Hollow Forest, one of the most remote and uncharted regions of the state. There was no metadata, no GPS tags. And here's the thing, I tried to look up the names they used in the footage, the university they said they went to, the car's license plate. None of it existed. It was like they'd never been to school or lived in any city. Their families had no idea they'd gone camping that weekend. All 4 of their phones were dead, and after the 4th day, the signal went dead too. My uncle worked in telecommunications. That's how he knew something was wrong, and it didn't stop him from finding them. The first few videos were normal. Setting up camp, drinking, telling jokes, the usual stuff people do when they go camping. But on night 2, things changed. Around 1:30 a.m., one of them, Drew, hears bells, small ones, like on a cat collar. Except there were no animals. The group laughs it off, but the bells return the next night, this time louder, closer. That's when Drew disappears. They find his boots neatly placed at the edge of camp. A trail of small antique bells leading into the woods. The others panic. One girl, Kara, wants to leave, but the others insist on searching. We can't start a fire because we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. We have to stay hidden. Eventually, they come across a clearing. It's wrong. The trees grow in a perfect circle. There are symbols burned into the bark. And in the center, Drew, standing completely still, eyes open, not blinking. "Drew!" They call out to him. He turns, smiles, and says, "I like the bells." Then the screen goes black. The next clip is chaos. The camera is running, but no one's holding it. "Help me!" Screaming in the distance. Rapid footsteps, a low, unnatural hum. For 2 minutes, the camera records only the forest floor. Then, a face leans into frame. Not human, eyes too wide, smile too long, and upside down. Finally, just text, white on black. If you watched this, it knows you. I tried to copy the files onto my hard drive, but they vanished. I tried to show the video to a friend. The SD card was blank. Now, every night at exactly 2:33 a.m., I hear bells. Not outside, in my room. Every single night for the past 11 months, I hear the bells ringing in my ears. Sometimes during the day. But at night, always at 2:33 a.m., I wake up and I can hear the bells. At first, it was subtle, like someone far away jingling keys. But now they're constant. I wear earplugs all the time. If I take them out, I hear the bells. I know what's coming. I try to warn my girlfriend, but she never hears anything. I have a feeling that if she took the SD card and watched it, the bells would ring for her too. My friends think I'm crazy. And maybe I am. Maybe this whole thing is in my head. But then last week, I noticed something strange. The blinds in my apartment were closed, yet sunlight streamed through. I opened them and saw the neighbor across the hall. She looked pale, shaken, whispering into her phone. Then she left. Quickly. I didn't think much of it until last night. I was awoken by bells. When I got up, I saw this. On my wall, written in lipstick, the same symbol that was on the tree in the video. I scrubbed it off, but today I noticed that it's back. I haven't slept in days. I can feel it in my bones. Something's coming. This isn't a story. It's happening to me. Please help. I don't know where else to turn. I don't know what to do. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media to see more submitted stories like these. And now, on to our last story. We're sitting around the fire. I pour some whiskey. It's neat. Okay, here goes nothing. You want to hear the story about my grandfather? Sure. Well, my grandfather was an explorer. He spent most of his life traveling the world, discovering uncharted lands, meeting exotic people. When he was 84, he decided it was time to settle down. So he moved to a small town in Vermont and bought a farmhouse. It was isolated, set deep in the woods. Perfect for an old man looking for solitude. But he didn't get much of it. See, my grandfather wasn't your typical old man. He was strong, healthy, sharp as a tack. But everyone in town thought he was weird. They said he was a hermit, a recluse. But really, he just liked being alone. One day, while exploring the woods near his farmhouse, he stumbled upon an abandoned cabin. It was old, dilapidated, looked like it hadn't been used in years, but something about it intrigued him, so he decided to renovate it. It took months, but slowly he restored the cabin to its former glory. He put in new windows and doors, fixed the roof, built a fireplace. He even put in a phone line so he could call for help if he needed it. He called it his sanctuary. He spent most of his days there reading, writing, thinking. The townspeople still shunned him, but he didn't care. He was happy in his sanctuary. Then one day, he disappeared. One minute he was there, sitting by the fire, reading a book. The next, he was gone. There was no sign of a struggle, no indication of where he might have gone. The townspeople searched for him for days, but they couldn't find a trace. They said he probably ran off, that he was just a kook who liked to disappear from time to time. But his family knew better. We knew he wouldn't run off. He was too happy in his sanctuary, too comfortable with his solitude. A week after he disappeared, my father and I went to the woods to search for him. We walked for hours, calling his name, but there was no answer. Just as we were about to give up, we saw something. In the distance, we saw a plume of smoke rising above the trees. We followed the smoke, and soon enough, we found it. My grandfather's sanctuary was burning to the ground. We rushed to the edge of the clearing and stared in horror as flames engulfed the cabin. We couldn't save it. We couldn't save anything. We stood there watching as the flames destroyed everything my grandfather had built. And then we heard a voice. "Why did you do that?" my father asked. The voice was coming from the trees. We turned and saw a man emerging from the bushes. He was tall and thin, with scraggly gray hair and beard. His eyes were filled with hate. "Why did you destroy his sanctuary?" the man asked. "He didn't destroy it," my father said. "The cabin was already burnt to the ground." The man looked at us for a moment, then turned and walked away. We never saw him again. To this day, I don't know what happened to my grandfather. Did that man kill him? Did my grandfather wander off and get lost? Or did he simply vanish into thin air? All I know is that after that day, the woods seemed darker, more menacing. I never felt safe in them again. I hope my grandfather is at peace wherever he is, but I'll never know for sure. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media to see more submitted stories like these. And if you want to hear more scary stories, check out another channel. Welcome to the third episode of Scary as Fuck. I'm your host, and today's story comes from a subreddit user. Let's jump right into Story 3, Under the Roots. Genre, creature survival horror. When I was 12, my father took me hunting in the Appalachians, just us deep in the wilderness. He said it was a rite of passage. To prepare, we checked into a small cabin a few miles from the woods and spent the first 2 nights just chilling. We played checkers, talked about life, ate canned food. Then on the morning of the 3rd day, we grabbed our gear and walked into the woods. For a week, we saw no one. We only saw a couple of deer and a black bear, which my father decided to try and hunt but couldn't find. On day 3, we found it. We were walking along a game trail when we came across a massive mound in the earth, covered in thick, tangled roots. It looked like something lay beneath it, but we couldn't see or feel anything when we tried to brush away some of the leaves and dirt covering it. "This ain't natural," he muttered, staring at the roots that looked almost man-made in their symmetry. We circled it, trying to find a way in or signs of life, but everything seemed sealed beneath the mound. Eventually, we decided to set camp nearby and hunt some deer, and we didn't return to the mound until later that night. We made a small fire and sat close to it while eating canned stew and talking. It was then that we started hearing it. Something large was circling the tent. I could hear the snap of twigs and the rustle of leaves, the thud of heavy footsteps getting closer. It was getting closer. It moved slowly. Too slow to be a bear, too heavy to be a deer. Whatever it was sniffing at our tent, pawing at it with sharp claws, letting out low hisses and growls. It wasn't an animal. I knew that much. It spoke in a language that I can't describe. yet somehow understood. And what it was saying chilled me to the bone. One phrase over and over again: "The ground has eyes." I huddled deeper into my sleeping bag while my father did his best to build up the fire. But even the flames couldn't keep the terror away. The creature continued to circle the tent, and every so often it would lean closer, as if trying to listen to our breathing through the nylon fabric. The tent creaked. I squeezed my eyes shut as something large and heavy pressed against it. It scratched at the nylon with long, wicked claws, but it never tore the tent open. And after about an hour, whatever it was wandered off back into the trees, leaving us in silence once more. The next morning, my father and I unzipped the tent to the creepiest scene. The ground around the tent was covered in claw marks. The creature hadn't just been outside the tent, it had been all around it. But nothing was taken. The lantern hanging from the tent was still there. My backpack, still zipped up, was sitting beside me. The creature had just watched us. The rest of that day, we tried to leave the forest. We walked for hours, but the forest seemed to be changing. We recognized none of the trees or plants. And even if we had recognized them, they weren't growing in the same patterns as before. It was like the forest itself was hiding something from us. I felt like we were being watched the entire time we walked, though, and every time I stopped to catch my breath, I could hear the whisper of leaves and branches behind us. "The ground has eyes," I told my dad. "I think we need to go back," he replied. "We don't want to get lost." But I knew what he was really thinking. He didn't want to admit that we might have been stalked by a wild animal, maybe a mountain lion or a bear. Then suddenly, the forest opened up into a small clearing and we saw our tent in the distance. The lantern hung from its center, casting long shadows on the trees around it. But as we approached, I noticed something wrong. The tent had been torn to shreds. My father's rifle was lying on the ground near the entrance, but he was nowhere to be seen. I crawled inside, terrified, calling his name, but there was no response. His canteen was on the ground, his backpack ripped open and emptied, but no sign of a struggle. It was like he'd vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the forest went silent. No wind, no birds chirping, no crickets chirping, not even a leaf rustling. The hair on my arms stood on end. I called out for my father again, but the forest swallowed my voice. I felt a sudden urge to run, to escape the clearing and hide. So I did. I don't remember how long I ran for. Minutes, hours, days, I don't know. All I do know is that when I finally stopped and looked back, I saw nothing but trees. The clearing and the tent were gone. Then, out of nowhere, I collapsed. I woke up sitting on the edge of a hill overlooking the forest below me. I was at the edge of the woods. I'd made it out. When the other campers arrived at the cabin later that night, they found me sitting by the lake in front of the cabin. I don't remember making the journey, but somehow I had gotten out of the forest. They said I'd been missing for 10 days. My father was never found. But sometimes in the dead of night, when the wind blows just right, I hear whispers coming from under my floorboards. And when I wake up in the morning, I look out to see that the roots from the tree outside my window have grown closer, a little bit closer than they were yesterday. And the mound of earth and roots in my backyard is starting to look a lot like a certain mound in the Appalachian woods. And sometimes when I'm home alone and I hear a scratching at my door, I think it's the creature outside my window, trying to get inside my house because it knows that I'm next. And this time, it's inviting me to come play.